Welcome to the very first episode of XYZ. I'm Ben Sampica, your millennial Gen Y voice, born in the era of Nickelodeon, the Backstreet Boys, as well as the tragedy of 9/11. And I'm actually joined by two other hosts, Chris Snook and Elmine Diedick, as we discuss how our experiences of the same events, such as our first day of school, our first crush, or our first computer, differed from a generational viewpoint. So, in this very first episode, we're going to dive into the slang we used and sort of the memes that we used while we were growing up. But first, let's meet our other two hosts who will bring their unique generational perspectives to our conversations. Let's go ahead and start with Chris.
Yeah, I'm Chris Snook. I'm representing Generation X back in the time of the Cold War. Where's the beef? And Duran Duran.
Hi, I'm Elmine. Representing Gen Z. I grew up in the decade where everything was online, from like YouTube all the way till now TikTok. Yeah.
So, I did not realize that "Where's the beef" came from your generation.
Yeah. Well, I said that I wasn't even sure if you guys would get the reference. So
Yeah, I've heard it a bunch. I do not get the reference though. So explain that.
Yeah. So, and one thing we'll find if we get more into the memes and the slang and stuff is a lot for my generation. A lot of it was from TV commercials, and "Where's the beef" was a Wendy's TV commercial. And it's been like a long time ago, so I'm sorry I didn't probably remember it correctly, but early 80s. Basically, this older lady goes into some other burger place, and she looks at the burger, and it's like teeny tiny. It's like a little tiny hockey puck, and she's like, "Where's the beef?" And that just all of a sudden that just went. I guess we didn't know the term viral at the time, but it just took off, and it's like everybody was saying about it. Everything politicians would say it about their opponents, and everything. It's just like everything was where's the beef. So, and the lady who played the lady in the commercial, she became kind of a semi. She was famous there she had her 50 minutes of fame for sure. So,
yeah, that's really interesting. Like, you talked about and largely I would say it was the same for me mostly. So like, late in the 90s. So I got my first computer in like 95, and I was only 5 years old, so it was really my older brother. But these things like really didn't. They were still mostly commercials. It was really like localized, and then all of a sudden it was like when I was like 9 or 10. It was like all of a sudden I was like connected to all these people, and there was all these like really like dorky things. Like probably one of the most popular things like in the late 90s, early 2000s on the internet was like this. You'd get called like a noob, like newbie, or and like the expression of like excitement or like something good happened was like woot, and it was like if you said those two words like you're like
Oh, dude, that's crazy. Because for "Where's the beef," they tried to bring that back like a few years ago, didn't they? Because I feel like I remember that they tried to do some variation of the commercial, like Wendy's did that again. And I didn't know that was from like way back when, but that's crazy.
Yeah, I missed the comeback, but yeah.
Was it like the same lady?
I have no idea. I know it didn't last that long because I remember like pretty briefly.
Yeah, for sure.
And for like noob, that's still being used nowadays. I mean, I grew up like with those like MLG memes, and noob was used a bunch. It's N20B. You have to use the 2 zeros, otherwise it's not true.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, and then with like from there, like the internet. I mean, even I'd say like even like early like YouTube came out in what, like 2005 or something, and like even before then it was like pretty slow on the internet. And then all of a sudden it was like YouTube, and then you have like Numa guy, and
Yeah.
like all of these like really like early, just I mean today they would just be completely like innocent videos, but it was like, oh my gosh, did you see that on the internet? You know?
Yeah, I've heard some of those. I feel like you guys, or Chris was talking about like getting from like TV shows. I feel like most of the stuff from my generation comes from like social media posts. I know like when I was a lot younger, it was always sort of YouTubers. So that's what kids watch rather than mostly like TV shows. So whatever like the YouTube, Minecraft YouTubers were saying or like PewDiePie was saying, that gets kind of like trickled down for like our vocabulary.
So you watched PewDiePie?
Yeah. He had like the bro fist stuff where you get like a little fist bump at the end of every video. And so people would always try to like imitate that at school. I remember that a lot.
But my son talks about PewDiePie too, so I vaguely know who that is. But
yeah, like it's honestly it's kind of crazy how really the internet changed these things. Like, you know, I feel like back in, I'm sure Chris can speak most of this, but really back like pre-internet, like it felt like there was like one thing going on, you know, like there was the beef, you know, and there was like press cut, like everything. It's like there's so much like competing for virality, you know?
I can even tell you like what the last thing that I remember was like viral, like from TikTok. I feel like I hear something new and it's like, oh, what is that? I never heard of that before. And then now I'm starting to see like TikToks where it's like, oh, if you went to high school in 2020, you're an uncle now. They say unk, so you're an unk now. So I'm like, oh, am I really that old? It's been like it's not that long ago, right? And now I'm like, I'm feeling old. I can't even catch up to anything. I feel like most people feel it that way because I can scroll TikTok like for like an hour straight, and then so much different stuff just goes through. Like I can't even remember anything.
I hadn't heard unked out. That's a new one for me. So I got to start using that now.
So what was like Chris, what was like besides where's the beef? Like where's the what? Like what's the thing that like everyone was saying when you were like, you know, 10, 12?
Yeah, well, maybe like 12 and later for sure. A lot of it came from, I remember a lot of it coming from Saturday Night Live, to be honest. And because now I know this is really dating me, but keep in mind that back, when I was a teenager, nobody had a video. There were no DVD players, no CD players, no video recorders, and we didn't get cable. I think maybe I knew 2 people who had cable and we thought they were rich, right? So we had 4 stations, or we actually only had 3 stations, ABC, CBS, and NBC. So NBC had Saturday Night Live, Saturday nights, and you had to stay up for it. If you missed it, you were SOL. I mean, there was no video recording or no streaming it later or anything. There was nothing like that. So we'd be Monday morning at school, we'd be talking about, hey, what happened on Saturday Night Live? And that's where all these, and looking back on it now, all those phrases are super stupid and make no sense. And I think we knew that at the time too. I don't think we thought, for example, there was one, you guys know who Billy Crystal is. I don't know. You've probably seen one.
Yeah.
Well, he kind of got his start on Saturday Night Live, and he played this character called Fernando, and he would just get on there and he'd have guests, and he would just say, "You look marvelous," and that was just like that became the phrase. We would just say that to people all the time, but it made no sense. I don't even know why we thought it was funny, but it was like a shared experience. That we had all watched that Saturday Night Live, and the next day that was something we could relate to. It was just even though we weren't together, we could share that experience of whatever happened. There was another one that's Billy Crystal in again, where he was talking to a worker friend of his, and they would just come up with the dumbest thing where they were hurting themselves and say, "I hate when that happens." And so we would just go around saying, "I hate when that happens." But again, dumb, it did not date well. Do you even watch Saturday Night Live? I know it's still a thing, but I mean, did you guys grow up watching that or?
Sometimes I always thought it was kind of cool because I was up that late when I was a kid, but like it was all on YouTube, so I never had to like past when I understood like kind of the jokes that are on the TV show. I was like, oh, I'm starting on YouTube the next day and I'll just watch them. I don't need to stay up super late or go play games.
Yeah, for me, we had like MTV, and then Comedy Central kind of like was all over that, and it kind of Saturday Night Live started like boiling into these other shows. I'm thinking of it like Half Baked. It's like it was like all those people, like started like getting into like these sort of like these low key movies at the time, and they'd constantly have like reruns of like Tommy Boy, Chris Farley.
Oh, right,
like all that
right.
stuff was just So like we would watch that, and then it was less like Saturday Night Live, so it started getting a little more like commercial almost.
But you probably didn't pick up any catchphrases from any of that. Probably
No, not
never.
really.
Yeah.
I feel like it was mostly, at least for me, it was mostly like the internet. There's like salty was like a huge like.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, you're salty.
Where'd that come from?
I don't know where originated. I heard it on the internet when I was 13.
I was always curious about that because all of a sudden it just appeared. To answer your question before, besides Saturday Night Live, there was just TV commercials is what I remember, and a little bit of movies too. But we didn't. It doesn't feel like we saw movies as much. Back when I was a teen, it was the 80s and there was the economic crisis going on. And so we didn't see a lot of movies. So it was TV commercials and Saturday Live is where I remember a lot of it. Lots of surfer talk, lots of totally tubular dude and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for me, it was like you guys said, like movies and TV shows. That was a part of it when I was a lot younger. I say like when I gained consciousness, to be like 2010. So like kind of first remembering stuff. I remember like thanks Obama. I don't remember Obama being elected, but I know like it was like thanks Obama. If anything happened, it was like thanks Obama.
Oh man, I forgot about that.
And then nowadays it's just like, for example, like the Twister movie came out with like Glenn Powell, and you don't even have to know or go watch the movie to figure out like the stuff people are bringing from it. Like there's memes nowadays where people go and dress up in trucks and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna be like Glenn Powell. My girlfriend loves him so much." And so like I get that information from TikTok now, and like other social media sites. So that's just crazy how for like in Gen X, you guys would like miss out if you didn't watch Saturday Night Live. For us, it's just like, oh, just give it a few more swipes and you'll understand.
That just blows my mind. Like that it's crazy how like I don't need to see the movie. I've seen the memes, like you've seen the movie, like all the highlights. Like it's just wild how that is today. Because totally, like I remember on that commercial point, Chris. Like I remember getting told that like all the Super Bowl commercials were like the best. You have to watch the Super Bowl just for the. I remember finally like getting old enough, like where I actually had somewhat of an interest in like watching the Super Bowl, besides just being forced to from my dad liking football, and like I was like, they're like lame. These are not good. Like these suck. So that was like very much like this sort of like for 18 years of my life that these were like something revered and the best of the best, and finally it came out and it was, these suck.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think looking back at them now, or even looking at the newer ones, I think they suck. But yeah, I do remember that, Ben. It was like because our generation relied so much on commercials. It's like, oh, these are going to be the grandpappy of all the commercials, and this is going to be where we get our memes. but
I remember Super Bowl commercials. It was third grade. I'm trying to think what game came out in third grade. That's how I remember what year it was, what game I played out. Because I got like one game a year for my PS3. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was could have been like Black Ops 1. And then there was the Super Bowl commercials. There was like some good ones, but we would like rank them in class and like watch them. Looking back at it, it was just an excuse for the teacher to go watch commercials rather than teaching, so that was kind of funny. But I don't know, yeah, I agree with you guys. It just kind of got like watered down. And I feel like the hype is still there. Like every year, people still want to watch the halftime show, but it's like more disappointment year after year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like some of like the professionalism kind of like there's YouTubers, I think of like the biggest ones like Mr. Beast, that are producing like these incredibly like professional like quality stuff, and like you don't have to go to commercials anymore. You don't have to go to like these huge events to like see like sort of these entertaining, I guess, quote unquote entertaining things, and so it's sort of like just like everything else, it's like kind of been diluted,
right?
From how it was like, okay, like the Super Bowl, like everyone's invested, into ads at this point. It's like if you miss it, or Saturday Night Live, it's like if you miss that Saturday, like it's over.
Yeah, now it's just like crypto and Temu ads during a Super Bowl. That's all you get. I don't know if I'm reaching Unk status, but it's hard to keep up nowadays with everything that's going on.
Speaking of unk status, so like, I was thinking about some of the words like that I used to use. One of them was like woot. Like I would like never say that. No, that would be terrible. Um, like really embarrassing. Like what's Chris? Like what is a phrase back then that was like super embarrassing to say if you could remember? Or that like today you would like either like expose yourself or be like this is just weird.
Well, I think I alluded to earlier there was a lot of surfer talk and Valley Girl speak. Do you guys know what Valley Girl speak is? Elmine says yes. Okay, so like,
Explain it to me.
so it was a thing back in the 80s. I don't know exactly where it started, but I know Frank Zappa came out with a song called Valley Girl, and he had his daughter, his 14-year-old daughter, talking on it, and she rattled a lot of it off. And there was a movie called Valley Girl too, and it was just like I guess teenage girls that lived in the valley had some money, then they would go to the malls and they just had this it'd be like oh, gag me with the spoon, oh, like totally gross, barf me out, that kind of stuff. And it was just that was a thing. I guess to answer your question, that was like I don't know that I ever really used any of those terms back then, but I would definitely not say any of them now. That was pretty bad. It just, in all the surfer speak, like I said, totally tubular, bodacious. We would say those things now, and I definitely would not say those.
For let's say my generation, like early 2010s, if you guys remember those like troll faces and like all of those like rage comics, people used to put like "la" in front of everything, and I think that just like looking back at it, you used to be like, oh yeah, that's like awesome, but like stuff like that. And it's like I could like never do that again without just like laughing at myself, like how stupid I sound.
Oh yeah, I still have some of those on my Facebook, like 2009, like pictures, those rage faces. Yeah, I leave them up just so I can like cringe, when I happen upon them. Mark Zuckerberg has implemented this like memory feature where it like takes you back, 10 years on that day or whatever, and it's like every year I just have to like eat that friend.
But you don't want to delete those posts?
Yeah, I don't want to delete them because it's just like, I have to remind myself.
Be worse.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of Mark Zuckerberg, I want to know what you guys' thoughts on, because you guys were like more like conscious when Facebook was like popping off in like 2008. Like, would you guys think he was like how people used to think about Elon Musk like 5 years ago? Like he was really like he's like a genius. He's so smart, or like I know the sentiment nowadays is like he's a lizard. He's like not real. He's like steals your data. So like, how was it back then when Facebook was like starting out?
Yeah. So at least for me, so I was like super into tech, super into video games and everything. So he was very like revered like as a god, at least like in my circles. It was like, oh, this big tech will solve all these problems of of the world, right? And it was very much sort of that, probably that vibe that still probably encompasses Silicon Valley today. It was very much like big tech can solve all these problems. But with Facebook, at least for me, so I got on Facebook in like 2008, which it's, I don't know, in today's terms, very very like early. It was basically just like 10 people I knew like at the time. Like I had no friends, not because I didn't have any friends, but because like no one was on Facebook that I knew. And then like I was on it like a few years. It was really cool. And it was the hot thing. It was how you literally connected with anybody, like outside. Cell phones were, at least for, I was pretty poor, so it like wasn't really that open to me. So it was like I could get on my computer, which I was on all the time playing video games, and like get on Facebook and like actually talk to people. And then find, I don't know, maybe 2013, 2014, it was like my dad and mom started to get on.
Yeah.
And then it was all over.
Yeah, it was just like, to like Reddit.
But now, Ben, what about before Facebook? I remember MySpace was just like a huge, huge thing. Just for like, it was like a flash in the pan. It seemed like, I don't know how long MySpace was a thing, but then it just kind of disappeared and Facebook was the thing. But do you remember doing anything with Facebook or MySpace?
I made a MySpace page, and I think I literally spent, I don't know, an hour on it, and then I never used it. So if any of you out there, I'm sorry for what
My first social media was, I think I did make a Facebook when I was a kid, but same thing like you, Ben. I used it for like a few months, and I was like, no other like fourth graders are on Facebook, so I'm just gonna like stop using it. And I think if I look back on it, there is some like stupid photos or like I would like screenshot on my like iPod about or like iPhone of some like stupid like YouTube videos I was watching, like posted up with like horrible grammar. But the first social media that like my generation really used was Instagram. That really catched on a lot. That's still like the number one. I think that's gonna be like our Facebook. So like that's what our kids are like. Oh, you use Instagram? It's like so old. But yeah.
I tell you, you talked about the memory feature in Facebook, and I was just thinking about how I get those too, Ben. And looking back, I feel so stupid because most of mine, you could I had already unked out apparently on me because mine were all like, I don't think I knew how to use it yet because I was like posting status updates, but like as if my name was first. It was like, so my post would say like, is making dinner for his family. So it was like, that was my post. It was like Christian Snook is making dinner for his family.
No,
That's how I was
Facebook
posting.
it used to be like that. I have
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yes, it used to the feed like very early, like probably 2010, like before then. It used to be like almost prompt you in that way.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the original prompt was like, "What is like Elmine up to right now?" Like, wasn't it something like that? It was along those
Yeah.
lines, where like it kind of you thought that's what you had to post.
Oh, so I wasn't as dumb as I thought. Well, I probably was, but at least not in that case. Okay.
And and I think at least in my defense of these, because some mine are also like this, and they're like really cringy and terrible. I'm gonna blame like back in the day, with like MSN Messenger and AOL online. It was very much like you had like these statuses, that you'd put on, and at least and again, in my defense of this, it felt like it was prompting you for like a status. And so you would basically say like, is going for a walk or something, and those types of things. So yeah.
Okay. I don't feel as bad now.
I mean, you brought up Instagram is like your first social media, and like that's like so wild for me because very early internet, it was like very text based, right? Like
Yeah.
downloading an image on my on my dial up internet would take over a minute, for a pixelated like picture of anything, right? And so like it was all text based, and so like I have never like evolved off of that. Like after Facebook, I went to like Reddit, which it was very there's certainly memes on there, but like large content is in the comments and in the threads and stuff like that. At least the ones I was always on, and so I never pivoted over to like, Instagram, like the video based, ones like that. I just never got there.
Yeah, nowadays it's like, I like using Reddit just because it's a lot more calm to me, a lot less stuff happening. But like, I don't know, I can't imagine like not just like seeing a bunch of videos like really quickly, like in TikTok, like you can keep scrolling forever, it loads instantly right when you swipe. That's crazy.
Hey, do you guys care if I go take it back to memes real quick? Because Ben, when you first said that was might be one of the things we covered, I didn't even know that was a word until like I don't know when, like 2010 or something maybe.
Sure.
And so I'm like, well, that won't apply to me in my generation. But then I kind of did some research and looked at that, and I'm like, oh, well, really, that term's been around since the 70s, but we just didn't use it. But then I was thinking about what was kind of like that for my generation, and you guys would get a kick out of this. It was very common for us to fax each other jokes, pictures, like funny comic strips and things like that. And then we would make photocopies of them, give them all to our friends, who would then fax them to their friends. So,
oh my god.
And so you would get these, and they were so blurry because they'd been copied and faxed so many times. And most of them were naughty,
That's amazing. I mean, it's hilarious, like how that evolved. I mean, that's like literally like the like the first maybe I don't know, some sort of proto like thread.
I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
As you were saying that, I was like reminded of in the mid 2000s, like sort of my version of that was like forwards. Like, holy shit, the forwards of emails. You
Yeah.
would get an email and like, it'd be like FW, 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 FW. It was like, oh my god, this thing, whatever's inside this email, it's insane because it's been forwarded 10,000 times, and and it was always my mom that was like, basically taking the bait on every single one of these. Oh my gosh, it was. I feel like it's the I don't know, more modern version of that faxing thing.
A lot of those emails though were chain letters too, weren't they?
Oh, for sure.
Funny.
It's funny how like little the spam like today has not really changed. Like I remember getting an email, or my mom getting an email like in, I don't know, I think I was like 10, and it was like, oh, we got this email, and like there's this guy in Britain, and like he's lost all his money, but it's in like this bank account.
Yeah.
It's like one of the first like Nigerian scams.
Yeah,
Like
it's the Nigerian prince.
yeah, my mom's like, didn't thank God. Like, I was like all in. I was like, we were like super poor, and I was like, this is our way out, guys. This is our way out.
Yeah.
And like nowadays, I just feel like an AI realistic photo of like some like relative I have. It's like, hey, I need all your money. It's like using their voice and their like photo and all. So that's crazy how that evolves from like horrible written email to like pretty much an AI photo of them.
Oh.
Speaking of how this is gonna like evolve, the AI stuff, like that. It's like is my mom gonna get a voicemail of me like panicking, needing money, and like she would absolutely call.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy how this sort of all of these memes and the slang, that's sort of the light side of it, and then there's sort of this dark side, this evolution of interconnectedness.
I think we'll start seeing like some sort of AI like checker or like we used to check for like spam emails so we can like verify if this is like made by AI or not, and then that will also be like a never 100% true thing if that was made by AI or not. So I don't know. It's crazy. Maybe we'll start seeing like video call me. And do you guys remember the meme where you like I think it started like Reddit where it's like Reddit ask me anything. You have like hold a piece of paper saying like this is you, and you like write stuff on that. So like maybe middle of a video call, like, hey, can you like just do this for me to make sure you're an actual person or not an AI? So,
Oh yeah.
I think it'll work out. Well, for like, yeah. How about like the slang stuff? Like, I know what's the beef trying to make a comeback that didn't really come through. Like, is there anything still living from Gen X?
Trying to think. Not really. Most of it's gone. Not really. Not most of what I can remember. Nobody says we're here to pump you up, or yeah, no, it's most people when I say those things, they have no clue I want to talk about. I don't think really a lot of it survived, to be honest. I don't know why that is. But yeah, no, I don't think it has really.
Honestly, I feel like a lot of the 80s and 90s stuff is like currently being like rebirthed or remastered or like recycled, in some way, and it's sort of like reintroducing, a lot of this stuff, obviously modernizing all of the cringe, just Twisters. It's like that was like a movie. In when I was 6, the movie terrified the hell out of me. It was amazing. At the time, living in Iowa, it's like this is like
right.
Yeah, these things are sort of like living on just through their remasters. At least the original ideas of them.
Yeah, I also feel like since your generation, Chris, wasn't like so interconnected like mine is and like Ben's is like later. I feel like our stuff could last a little bit longer or like be revisited a lot easier because it's everything's there. It's all documented somewhere.
Yeah, which is with mine. You've got, if you can dig for the commercials, but movies, and that's about it. Yeah.
Star Wars, right? So like when I was 10, I think we talk about like cross cutting, like everything, like Star Wars cross cut, like everything. 3 years, while they were pumping out that trilogy. So like, was it kind of the same, when it came out the first time, I guess?
Well, when the first movie came out, I was 10 and it just like it came out of nowhere. I mean, I had seen sci-fi stuff. I had seen, the original series Star Trek was in reruns for I don't know how long, forever. And Space 1999, some of those things that nobody probably knows what are now. But when that came out, it just came out of left field, and we didn't know. Our minds were blown. Our minds were just totally blown when we saw that movie. I mean, I just remember being obsessed, and I only saw it once because remember, you got to see a movie once, and there was no DVDs or anything, and so I just like, so nobody could, you couldn't really just like watch it after it left the theaters. There was no renting a movie or anything like that. So it lived on in comic books and things like that you had to kind of remember what the storyline was. But yeah, it just it completely exploded.
Yeah, just like, so I was thinking when it came out, at least like when the Phantom Menace came out, like everyone I knew had like a lightsaber, and like
Oh yeah.
we would like beat the shit out of each other with the lightsabers like constantly, but like
Yes.
also, like like the Force be with you, like everyone
Yes.
was, and like it was like honestly that was like as close as it got. So I was super into like video games and stuff. It was cool or acceptable really to do as a kid.
Yeah.
And like all of a sudden it was like this nerdy thing that I liked. It was like I could finally like talk to people at school and like I had lightsabers too. It was like, this is
Yeah.
awesome.
Like I was trying to say before, it came out of nowhere. There was nothing like that before. That was the first time we had ever experienced like that before. And it was for everybody. We were all saying, "May the Force be with you." It was all over the place. It was huge. And the Kenner company, I'm sure you guys have heard this, the Kenner toy company that was supposed to be doing the toys for the first movie, they had no idea how big it was going to be. They had not planned any of this, and it just completely exploded. But nobody could get a toy. There were no video games. We didn't have video games then. So there was just nothing, but like we would just make lightsabers, if like roll papers or paper towel holders and things like that. It was crazy. We just all, yeah, it was very viral. I guess I'd say everybody at school would be saying, "May the Force be with you." It was huge. Yeah.
Explain more about like even me being a really poor kid, I still had a lightsaber. Like when you were talking about like doing it with sticks and
Yeah. And a lot of that was just like I said, because they hadn't planned on it being popular. I mean, they just thought, well, this is just going to be another dud. But when it became so popular, everybody wanted toys, everybody wanted the games or whatever, but you just couldn't find them. And so we kind of made do with our own, and yeah, we made, like you said, the lightsabers out of sticks and paper towel holders or whatever, and we would just do that. And but that eventually that you could get your hands on some of the toys, but they were terrible. I don't know if you guys have seen some of the original ones. Oh my gosh, you guys should look this up, because like so one of the ways that we satisfied our urge for Star Wars stuff, because like I said, you couldn't go back and see the movie, there was nowhere to rent it, and there weren't really toys available, but there were comics. Like I don't remember if it was DC or Marvel, I don't know who was doing it, but they had Star Wars comics. But if you could see the way they portrayed Luke Skywalker in these comics, he looked like Conan the Barbarian with a lightsaber. He was like, "I'm Luke Skywalker." Because nobody, we didn't know the lore. We didn't really, nobody really knew what Star Wars was. It was just that first movie, and everybody kind of ran with it and tried to, build their own canon, I guess, from it, story from it. And it was just, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Were there a ton of like copycats back then? Because like I think of just how much people like try to ride coattails like nowadays, right? Like,
right. Oh, I know people were definitely trying. I don't really remember anybody being successful with that or even coming close. I remember the first spoof I saw they had this. You'll have to check this out because it's kind of humorous. But somebody, hey Dexter, somebody came out with a spoof of Star Wars, like probably in the year or so after it was. They just made this little independent film called Hardware Wars, and it was all done with like mixers and just different appliances, and it was kind of funny. You'll have to check that out. But yeah, everybody was trying to cash in on the success, but I don't really remember, I don't remember a movie coming out that was really like anybody that was really successfully copying it. But
yeah, I imagine the barrier to entry is like a lot higher than I'm sure even Elmine, you probably even know like people that are like attempted to be like YouTube stars or something like that.
Yeah. You ever seen like do like crazy stuff where it's like, oh, YouTube prankster gets shot trying to make a viral prankster video now. And but for like Star Wars, I like how Chris, you had the first story, Ben, you had the prequels, and I had the Clone Wars, the TV show. So that's crazy. That's for all three. And then I think it was around middle school they released like the 7th movie, I think. For that coming out, but yeah. No, Star Wars has always been a pretty big thing. My toys were awesome. I always had Legos, and I'd reenact like cool battles from the Clone Wars TV.
Yeah, Dexter still gets into the Clone Wars thing. He'll go back and watch all those. That's still.
Clone Wars was a thing, but like I didn't think it was like that big. Like, was it actually like that huge of a thing? I guess to you, Elmine?
I don't think so at the time. I would say Clone Wars was like the last thing that I remember before streaming came out that I would always watch. But I do remember like nowadays, like any like guy I talked to like at college was always like, oh yeah, I used to watch Clone Wars all the time. But I felt like being the nerd kid at school, I never talked to him about the Clone Wars stuff. So I kind of felt like I don't know how big it was, but yeah. I looked up the those like first edition Star Wars toys. So there's like action figures you like move their arms and legs. That's all.
But did you find one like the ones I saw? Like they look nothing like the characters from the movies.
Oh yeah. I see what you mean.
It's some of them were pretty bad. But I will tell you, like it was I think the next year, the Christmas. Like I think Star Wars came out in 1977, and I think like by the Christmas of 1978, I had an X-wing toy that was really good. It was pretty good. So they'd finally realize the error of their ways and actually made decent things, I think. But
did you ever keep any of the toys and resell them for a lot of money?
My kids have destroyed all my. I planned on that, and I had them in boxes. But over the years, the kids have found them and just stripped them of all their parts. And I did sell one. I had something from the original series of Star Trek that sold for a couple $100 on eBay a while ago. But that was about it. So
yeah, I had. So I felt like that was also like a very. I think of in my generation like Beanie Babies, like there was still like this, this concept of if you collect things, like it will then pay off, if you hold on to them. Like Beanie Babies is obviously like probably the most popular like version of where that was complete live.
I have a better one. NFTs.
Oh.
Okay. Elmine wins.
You guys are the NFTs. Those are supposed to be your gateway to be a billionaire, and look what happened.
Yeah, that's so like true. Like Chris's generation, like the collectibles were like actually kind of collectible still. Mine were like physical, but a complete scam, and then yours were just digital.
Well, I will say though, before Beanie Babies, there was Cabbage Patch Kids. Do you guys know what that is? Have you heard of those? Okay, so that was the Beanie Babies of the early '80s, and so I knew like all my friends. I never had one, of course, but like even male friends at school, they're like, I'm going to get one of those for Christmas because I'm going to save it. It's going to be worth thousands of dollars by the time I graduate, and that's what people were doing. They were buying them up left and right. And when I was a little bit later in the 80s, our house got broken into, and the things they took were collectible coins and all of my sister's Cabbage Patch dolls.
Are they worth anything?
Cabbage Patch, yeah. Were they worth anything?
Felt like Beanie Babies, or as they know. Yeah.
Well, Ben, you had like Pokemon cards.
Yeah, as a kid, I didn't even play the game. You know, it was I don't even know really why we bought into them. They just looked cool, you know, and everyone had them
Yeah.
at school. I had I don't know, all the worthless ones. I'm not joking. Like I literally had them until I don't know 6 years ago. You know, I had like these binders just full of them. Went through them all, and was on eBay. And it's like this was $1, this was 50 cents, and it's like, well, this is not worth my time. You know, and I just basically I did 600. I kept going through, and it was like I was just like that's it, throwing them all away. You know, like this is dumb. So.
Yeah, and they made a comeback during like COVID. People like the whole like Pokemon cards and sports cards. I feel like that's still kind of buzzing right now. But yeah, NFTs hurt the collectibles for our generation.
You got the short end of the stick there for sure.
Yeah, to that list, but like it seems like that market is wild as it is, like is something else. Like people obviously do make money there. So
yeah, I paid for a few dinners buying and selling some Bitcoin, so that was nice.
I've only ever lost.
Me too.
Do not take my investment advice.
Yeah.
I was super early into it. I was like 11 or 12. I was watching a YouTuber and he was talking about it, and so I did some like research into it, and I was like, "Mom, Dad, like, can I get this like computer and then I can like mine it and stuff?" I didn't know. There's no way I could have even set that up when I was 11. But like, it was like, oh, it's so cool, like this like coin stuff. And friends were like, oh no, it's a scam. And then so when crypto had its like first boom, like 2016, I'm like, remember like a few years ago I told you guys about this, and so that was funny. But yeah.
I have so many. It's painful for me to talk about Bitcoin because back in 2011, I had a Bitcoin mining machine, and it was like at that time I was super poor, but I was like, I think it was like $20 a Bitcoin or something, or maybe it was like 100, but it was way more money than I had at the time, like $100 for one Bitcoin. So I was like mining Bitcoin, and it was basically like breaking even with my electricity bill that I was paying for rent, and I was like, well, this is dumb, like this I don't even know if it's going to be worth anything, so like I just like abandoned it. I don't even know how many Bitcoin I had, but it went on for a few months. I mined Bitcoin, and and then I had a bunch of Litecoin too, in like 2011, and like it was like I don't know 50 cents, per Litecoin, and I had I don't know $200 of it, and I just like threw it all away, and it's like now it's like it's just there's so much regret, like it's just painful to talk about. It's so painful to talk about this for me.
Yeah, was your Bitcoin mining machine a USB stick?
No, I actually had a whole dedicated machine, and I was actually running I was in an apartment with like 3 other people, and so like the electricity bill, it was like shared. I wasn't telling them I was mining Bitcoin. Obviously, the computer was in a closet.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a full dedicated computer to it.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing was that or like AMD like it was like 2014, 2015. My dad just started investing. I was like, oh, can you just buy me some AMD? I have like a good feeling about this. And it was like a few bucks, and now it's like hundreds. So I'm like, oh man, so many more stories.
My paycheck at the time, and then it was like, oh, so much regret. And then like Intel started just like absolutely like kicking their ass, and it was like, well, I don't know what's gonna happen here, I was 20 years old, and yeah.
Now I just buy ETFs, and I'm like, I'll look at it when I'm like 40. I'll see what happens.